The heat was becoming a nuisance, and Samuel knew it would only get worse from here. The two of them had arrived on the village's border in the early hours of the morning. Tamara would not be up and about for at least an hour. They rested under the cover of the trees, Vana leaning against a tree trunk and Samuel laying down on his chest. A few buildings, barely visible, stood beyond the trunks and branches. Samuel had brought his book and writing supplies, so while he busied himself with coming up with a design for his wheel, Vana enjoyed reading his encyclopedia. A little odd. Samuel thought he assumed that it would only take a single reading for Vana to memorize every word, though perhaps she just liked reading. The only wheel he could think of was one of those old-fashioned ones with spokes, like you found on a horse-drawn carriage. That would take a lot of work to make, not to mention everything needed to be accurate or it wouldn't fit together, and to top it all off, you would actually need to bend the wood on the outside, which Samuel did not have a clue how to do. Rubbing both sides of his temple, he cursed at himself for not paying attention in his school workshop. Even now, he could hear Mr. Linner now. You should pay attention. You will need to know this one day. Miserable bugger, you had to be right, didn't you? Samuel muttered to himself. Okay, he had 6 days to fine-tune it before the panic set in. He began to carefully draw the center. He drew a hole in the center for the axle to slide through, and then began to wonder how many spokes there should be. As few as possible to make it simple, he thought, but then again, if he did too few, it wouldn't support the weight of the wagon. 8, he said. That's a nice even number. The village was beginning to stir, and slowly, the sound of the birds was eclipsed by the chatter of the villagers. At this time of day, only the boy would be up and about, one of the advantages of being warm-blooded. Samuel looked over his shoulder. Vana was staring intensely at the pages, his eyes twitching ever so slightly as they flowed over the words. As he looked, he found there was something odd about the way she sat today. Doesn't your tail get in the way when you sit down? Samuel asked her. Vana looked up from the book and then began to wag her tail back and forth. Not really, no, she replied. But what do you do if you want to rest your back against something? Samuel said, still not convinced. Vana's tail stopped motionless in the air and then rested against her back and drooped over her shoulder. Happy, she said. Waving his hand dismissively, Samuel returned to his work. He didn't need anything fancy, just good solid spokes. Vana put the book down, crawled over to him and laid down next to him. Afternoon, Samuel stated dryly. Oh, stop moaning, Vana replied, giving him a quick jab in the arm. You know you're surprisingly chummy, considering we've not known each other for a week, Samuel noted. Am I? Vana asked, confused. She had not had many positive interactions in her life, but if anything, she felt they had taken longer than usual to become friends. Samuel just shrugged. I'm not complaining. If anything, I prefer it this way. It's just that I would not expect it from another human. That gave Vana something to think about. Putting that aside for the moment, she looked at Samuel's drawings. Why does it have to be like that? She asked, pointing to the admittedly complex design. It doesn't, but I just can't figure out how to do it otherwise, Samuel explained. It took some time before Samuel was finished, but now that it was done, he could relax. He couldn't do anything else until Tamara showed up. He collected his bag and took out his pages on Dinganex. Samuel then started to get more work done. As Vana watched him work, she asked him, Samuel, why are you so interested in this? She gestured to the pages. Samuel put down his quill and replied, I don't know. It's just something my kind have always done. Seek answers to questions no one asked. That seems silly, Vana said. Samuel turned to her and said, You're not wrong. There was a deafening scream from the village, and both Vana and Samuel stood up. They scanned the trees, thinking that one of the villagers had stumbled across them, yet there was no one there. Nothing to do with us, Samuel said, relieved, and sat down again. What do you think it was? Vana said, still looking at the buildings. Not sure. Could be some poor kid skinned his knees, or more likely their mom and dad surprised them with present. Samuel answered, waving his hand. As he was about to go back to his work, he noticed that Vana was still standing. Samuel stood beside her and said, What's the matter? Vana looked at him and said, Nothing, it's just, she petered out. It's just. Samuel said, encouraging her, I've lived on the edge of villages before, watching from the trees, and I wonder if I could ever get used to it. You know, being around people, Vana told him. Samuel smiled gently, put his arm around her, pulled her close, and said, "It will probably be difficult, but every new experience is, once you're in there, you will learn to love it." Vana was about to correct him when they heard a voice call out, "I thought I told you not to do anything naughty." Vana tore herself away from Samuel, her face going ever so slightly red as she did so. Samuel, however, was utterly unfazed. He turned around and said, "Good morning." Tamara stood with her hands on her hips and a smirk on her face. She looked at Vana, who quickly moved away so she did not have to look into Tamara's eyes. Samuel, however, just stood there with an easy smile, completely oblivious. Tamara rolled her eyes and said to herself, "It's no fun when they don't react." "Did everything go all right?" Samuel asked Tamara as he walked up to her and gave her a hug. "Yes, I went to see Mr. Faisal and Mrs. Neva before coming here. We should have a few bits and pieces ready by this afternoon," Tamara explained. Tamara explained that the bed and its brackets would be done first. The rest should be done in a couple of days, and they would be able to place any extra orders without much trouble. This was excellent. They should be able to get the simple, well, relatively simple, jobs done fast, and then they can focus on the tricky bits. "Wait," Samuel said. "If we are assembling it, we will—" Tamara cut him off and said, "I have already asked to borrow some tools. Don't worry." "What was that scream we heard a short while ago?" Vana asked Tamara. She waved her hand dismissively and said, "Oh, that was Nora. She had got a new top from her mom. It's her birthday today." Samuel had heard of this girl. Tamara had mentioned her before. She was one of her friends, though not as close as Handus or Bekanda. She had sky-blue hair and scales, if Tamara's description was accurate, and she absolutely adored clothes. Without much to do, they spent the wait relaxing and having a bit of fun. It was vital that they did not burn themselves out. Samuel did have one more question for Tamara. "How can you spend a week helping us? Don't you have other duties?" She smiled and said, "I had a chat with my mom, and she said that all my other duties are suspended until I find a way to solve the farming problem." Samuel grinned as well. He liked Pancha, such an intelligent woman. After several more hours, there was some activity around the forest border, a voice calling out for Tamara. She left both Vana and Samuel alone while she checked it out. She knew exactly who it was by their voice alone. Standing beside the wheat fields was Mr. Faisal, along with Arun and Zebulun. Tamara had asked that they bring the items together, and it seemed that Mr. Faisal had enlisted the boys' help in carrying the wagon bed. "Ah, there you are," Faisal called as Tamara emerged from the shade. "You really are quick, aren't you, Mr. Faisal?" Tamara replied, inspecting the large wooden bed. "Yeah, though I wasn't confident with the design, so I added some supports here," Faisal said, moving his hands up and down, pointing out some perpendicular planks on the bottom of the bed. "Oh, and I almost forgot," Faisal said as he removed a small bag of tools from his shoulder and handed it over to Tamara. "The nails and brackets are in there, too," he added. "Thank you very much, Mr. Faisal. And you too, boys," Tamara replied, smiling at the twins. "Do you need any help carrying it?" Zebulun asked. Tamara shook her head and answered, "No, I can take it from here." "Oh, and I have another project for you, Mr. Faisal," Tamara said before he left. Tamara handed the drawing to him. Faisal smiled, but it quickly evaporated as he looked at the images. Faisal shuffled the drawings, looking at each one only briefly before moving on to the next. Faisal did not understand what he was being asked to make. In all his years, he had never seen anything like this, and it showed in his expression. "Tamara, what is this?" he asked, finally able to tear himself away from confusing images. She smiled and replied, "It's called a wheel." Faisal was good, he knew that, but this, he felt it, was beyond him. Tamara might as well have asked him to build a mountain. He did not have to say anything. Tamara already knew what was going through his head, so she told him, "It's all right, Mr. Faisal. All you have to do is build each individual piece and then put it all together. Just think of it as 10 small projects rather than one big one." He started to calm down. When he looked at it like that, it did seem much easier. In fact, now that he thought of it, he had made all this before. He had just never put the pieces together. Yep, that's why she's going to be a great village head, Faisal thought. Tamara told him that he could keep the drawings in case he got lost and quickly told him what size she wanted each piece to be. The three of them left, and as soon as they were out of sight, she said, "You can come out now." Vana and Samuel appeared from the woods, and Samuel said, "That went well. Didn't even ask why you were out here." "Yeah, I think they just don't try anymore," Tamara replied. Samuel looked at the wagon bed, giving it a few taps. He said, "Looks sturdy." He attempted to lift it. His shoulder did not protest, but he found that he lacked the strength. He grunted and said, "Okay, Tamara, you grab one side. Vana, you grab another, and I lift this one, and we should be able to get this into the woods." Vana did come over, but instead of following the plan, she lifted the wood over her head and walked into the trees. Vana carefully placed the wood on the ground and looked at Samuel and Tamara. "What?" she said as they stared at her. "That was impressive," Samuel answered. "Really?" Vana replied. Both Samuel and Tamara nodded. "Anyway, there's work to do," said Samuel, and he took the bag from Tamara and removed the tools, brackets, and nails. "Okay, everyone, grab a hammer, 12 nails, and 3 brackets," Samuel explained. "You see where the planks join?" He ran his finger between where 2 of them met. "Now put the bracket over both of them and hammer the nails into the holes," he added. It was reasonably simple work, and they completed it in good time, though they hit their thumbs more than once. To make sure that it could withstand the weight, they collected some rocks and sat the bed so that it was suspended off the ground, after which Samuel stood on it. It did not give an inch. Samuel invited Vana and then Tamara to stand on it, but it held firm. A great feeling of accomplishment came over the 3 of them, and for the first time, they truly believed that they could do it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day came, and once again, Samuel and Vana turned up early. Tamara arrived in due course and told them they should receive the axle today. Samuel was impressed. He had not expected it to be completed this quickly until Tamara explained that Faisal had done it hundreds of times before, so many that he did not even have to think about it. The axle arrived along with the bracket required to attach it to the bed, and Vana once again displayed her strength, hauling the thick wooden axle as though it were a twig. This next job, however, was not as simple as the last one. The axle had to be perfectly straight, or it would not work correctly. To make things more complicated, they had no equipment to check it was level, no set squares or spirit levels. Yet Samuel and Tamara had the next best thing, Vana. Using her sharp eyes and powers of observation, she was able to get it as close as possible. They hammered the brackets and axle to the base. It was challenging. The brackets were made deliberately smaller so that they did not slip or roll with the wheels. Once again, Vana came to the rescue, and she made short work of them. "All in all, a good day's work," Samuel said as he rested by a tree. "Yep, but what are we going now?" "It won't be night for quite a while, and I don't want to spend the next 4 hours sitting on my backside," said Tamara. Samuel scratched a steadily growing stumble on his chin, saying, "I need a shave. We could go for a walk." "Where to?" Tamara asked. Samuel had a quick think and replied, "We could walk around the village and show Vana the sights." Vana, who had been resting her eyes, opened them and said, "I can't go in there. They'll chase me out." Samuel shook his head and said, "No, we'll walk around the edge, keeping to the trees. That way, you can explore without anyone knowing you're there." Vana did not agree at first, and Samuel respected her decision, but after around half an hour of twiddling their thumbs, she gave the go-ahead. They circled the village, pointing out the various buildings and what they were for. They did have a few close calls, but whenever someone thought they had spotted them, Tamara walked out of the woods, said hello, and the villager thought nothing of it. "It's so busy," said Vana. "Yeah, it can get fairly crowded at this time, especially during the harvest festivals," agreed Tamara. "My mom told me about them. She said that there could be so many people that you could not move," replied Vana. "Well, I don't know about that, but it can be a bit of a squeeze," said Tamara. Samuel spotted a familiar face amongst the crowd. He was covered in blue chitin with hair to match, and following him was a large black dog, though Samuel called it a wolf. "Oh, goody," said Samuel. "What?" Vana asked. She was surprised that anything could make Samuel so displeased. Samuel pointed to the Sisindeli and then turned his back to him and slumped himself behind a tree, arms crossed. Turning to Tamara, Vana asked, "What's going on?" Tamara sighed and said, "That is Mr. Kimday. He and Samuel have a less than cordial relationship, and Mr. Kimday has never forgiven Samuel for what he did to his puppy." "It's not a puppy. It's a rabbit mutt," Samuel interrupted. "So what happened?" asked Vana, her curiosity overcoming her manners. Samuel refused to answer, so Tamara told it. It was not very long. The two of them had only met twice. On the first occasion, Samuel had broken Kimday's jaw and put out his dog's eye, and on the second, Samuel had done nothing but antagonize him, and since then, Kimday had been the most vocal in his distaste for Samuel. "I didn't think you hated anybody," Vana said a few seconds after the story ended. Samuel shook his head and replied, "I don't hate him. I'm just not fond of him."